They planned the wedding at my house without asking me. 3 weeks before my brother's wedding, I received a text from a woman I barely knew. "Congratulations. I can't wait for the beach ceremony." I stared at the message for almost a minute. Beach ceremony? I had no idea what she was talking about. Then she sent me a photograph. It was a picture of my house. My house. The one I had spent years working to afford. The one overlooking the water outside Santa Barbara. And beneath the picture was a caption, "Evan and Chloe's wedding venue." My stomach dropped. I called my mother immediately. "Mom, why is everyone saying Evan's wedding is happening at my house?" There was a pause. Then she said something that made me realize they hadn't made a mistake. They had simply assumed I would surrender. "Because it's perfect for the wedding." I laughed because I genuinely thought she was joking. She wasn't. My name is Lauren. I'm 31 years old. 5 years earlier, I had started a small interior design company from the spare bedroom of my apartment. For 2 years, I barely paid myself. I worked weekends. I answered emails at midnight. I painted sample boards on my kitchen floor because I couldn't afford an office. Eventually, the business took off. I hired employees. Then I opened a studio. 3 years later, I bought my house. It wasn't inherited. Nobody gave it to me. I didn't marry into money. I earned it. So when my mother casually told me that my younger brother's wedding had been planned around my property, I couldn't understand how she had reached that conclusion. "Mom, you didn't ask me." "We're family, Lauren." "That's not an answer. You don't even live there full time." "I do live there. Lauren, it's one afternoon." One afternoon. That phrase became my mother's favorite weapon. It was only one afternoon. Only one wedding. Only a few hundred guests. Only a little inconvenience. I asked her who had actually booked the venue. She went quiet. Then she admitted that my father had already spoken to the wedding coordinator. My brother Evan had already approved the seating arrangement, and invitations had already gone out. They had planned an entire wedding at my property without asking me. I told her the answer was no. She became angry immediately. "You've become so selfish since you started making money." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Selfish? Your brother has waited years for this. And I've worked years for my house. You have plenty." There it was. That word. Plenty. Apparently, having more than someone else meant your belongings automatically became available to them. I ended the call. That evening, my father called. He didn't ask me to reconsider. He told me I was embarrassing the family. "People have already received invitations." "That's unfortunate. You can't do this to your brother." "They did this to me." He became silent. Then he said something I'll never forget. "Sometimes you have to sacrifice something for family." I looked through the glass doors at the ocean. "Then sacrifice something that belongs to you." He hung up. I thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. The next morning, my grandfather called. His name was Arthur. He was 78 and had spent most of his life building a chain of hardware stores across California. He wasn't a loud man. He rarely argued. He didn't need to. When Arthur had something to say, people usually listened. "Your mother called me," he said. I sighed. "Of course she did. Don't worry about the wedding." "What does that mean?" "It means don't sign anything." "I haven't." "Good. Then," he said, "and don't let your father pressure you into anything." I asked him why he sounded so certain. He laughed. "Because your father has forgotten something." "What?" "Who actually owns the building he works from?" I sat upright. My father ran a small property management company. For years, he talked about the office building as though it belonged entirely to him. I'd never questioned it. Grandpa Arthur didn't explain further. He simply said, "Let them keep talking." Then he hung up. 2 days later, my parents came to my house. My mother brought pastries. That was how I knew something was wrong. She only brought pastries when she wanted something. She walked into my kitchen smiling. "Sweetheart, let's not fight." I didn't answer. My father sat down at the table. "Your brother is devastated. Evan hasn't called me. He shouldn't have to." I looked at him. "Why not?" He frowned. "Because this is your responsibility as his sister." I almost laughed. How did his wedding become my responsibility? My mother stepped in. "Because you have the perfect place. And nothing is going to happen to you if you let him use it. Except I don't want to." She looked genuinely offended. You don't even have a reason. I don't need one. My father slammed his palm against the table. You've always been difficult. That hurt. Not because I believed him. Because it confirmed something I'd spent years trying not to notice. Whenever I succeeded, my family celebrated. But only until my success stopped being useful to them. I stood. The answer is still no. My mother began crying. My father called me selfish again. Then they left. That night, I called Grandpa. I don't understand what you're doing. I'm not doing anything. Then why did you tell me not to worry? Because your father is about to learn the difference between family and entitlement. The next week, a letter arrived at my father's office. I didn't know what was inside. I only knew something had happened because my mother called me 6 times. I didn't answer. Then my father called. I answered the 7th time. His voice sounded different. Not angry. Worried. Did your grandfather speak to you? Yes. What did he tell you? Nothing. There was a long silence. Then my father said, your grandfather wants me to vacate the office. I froze. What? The building. I remembered what Grandpa had said. Who actually owns the building he works from? My father explained that years earlier, when his company was struggling, Grandpa had purchased the property and allowed him to operate there. My father had always intended to buy it eventually, but eventually had never come. He had spent years treating a temporary arrangement like an inheritance. Now Grandpa had finally asked him to leave, unless he followed one condition. He had to acknowledge in writing that the property belonged to Grandpa. My father refused. He hired an attorney. Grandpa had been waiting for that. He produced every document, every payment record, every tax receipt, every agreement, every letter. My father had nothing. He had spent years believing that because he was family, paperwork didn't matter. Grandpa proved otherwise. But there was another surprise. The lawyer also sent my father a second document. It concerned my house. My parents had apparently been telling relatives that they had helped finance my purchase. They hadn't. Not $1. Grandpa had kept the records from the beginning. He knew exactly how much I'd paid. He knew where the money came from. And he knew my parents had nothing to do with it. My father was furious. My mother came to my office. This time, she wasn't crying. She looked exhausted. Your grandfather is destroying this family. I looked at her. No, he's showing us what the family was already like. She sat down. The wedding is only 2 weeks away. I know. What are we supposed to do? I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Rent a venue. She stared at me. You'd really let your brother go through all that? He can still get married. Without the house. Yes. She stood up. You're going to regret this. Maybe I would. But I knew I wouldn't regret protecting something I'd worked my entire adult life to build. A few days later, my brother finally called. Evan. We hadn't spoken since the argument. I answered. Hey, can we meet? We met at a small cafe. He looked uncomfortable. For the first few minutes, he actually seemed sincere. He admitted that our parents had handled everything badly. He said they shouldn't have announced the venue before asking me. He apologized for staying silent. I thought maybe, finally, my brother understood. Then he asked, so could you reconsider? I frowned. The wedding is next week. I know. And maybe you could just let us use it for a few hours. I stared at him. You still want the house? It's already planned. No. Lauren. No. He sighed. You're making this bigger than it needs to be. I smiled sadly. No, Evan, you are. He didn't understand. So I explained. The problem isn't the wedding. It's that all of you decided that because I built something you wanted, you were entitled to it. He looked down. Then he said, you've changed. I nodded. You're right. I had finally learned that saying no didn't make me cruel. The wedding was eventually moved to a hotel several miles inland. My brother got married. I didn't attend. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I wasn't interested in pretending everything was fine. My parents eventually had to move my father's business to a smaller office. Grandpa didn't throw them out immediately. He gave them several months to make arrangements. That was his way. Firm, but not cruel. And my relationship with him became stronger than it had ever been. Every Sunday, he came to my house for lunch. Sometimes we'd sit on the patio and watch the sunset. One afternoon, I asked him why he'd waited so long to confront my father. He looked at the ocean. Because people reveal themselves when you stop rescuing them. I never forgot that. My house is still mine. The wedding venue never happened. The family group chat eventually went silent. And I stopped feeling guilty about it. Because I finally understood something. When people call you selfish for protecting what you worked for, sometimes they're not angry because you're wrong. They're angry because your boundaries stopped benefiting them. My grandfather didn't save my house. I'd already saved it. He simply reminded my family that I didn't need permission to protect it. And that was the lesson I carried with me. You can love your family without giving them ownership of your life. Sometimes saying no isn't the end of a relationship. Sometimes it's the moment you finally discover what that relationship was built on. Please subscribe. If you enjoy emotional, dramatic, and unforgettable stories, please subscribe to my channel and turn on the notification bell. Your support means so much to me and helps me bring you more amazing stories every week. Subscribe and join the family.